Whenever you talk about Delhi, it's air pollution. If you refer to Bombay, it's the overall collapse of civic mess. When you talk of Bengaluru, it's all traffic.
Yeah.
You reach that city, everybody talks about congestion. 60% of GDP is made up of urban spaces. And what is the land there? 3%. These business people are trying to bring in a certain change, whatever their affiliations or whatever their thinking is. But on this issue, I think they are right and they must be heard.
Hello and welcome. I'm Srinivasan and this is Talking Sense with Srini. In this edition, we are turning the spotlight on Bengaluru's infrastructure crisis, a meltdown that sparked outrage across social media and even a public spat between Biocon chairperson Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw and Karnataka's political leadership. But here's the thing, this isn't just a Bengaluru problem. Almost every Indian city is facing a crisis with crumbling infrastructure, chaotic growth and poor urban planning that we rarely talk about. Joining me is our editor-in-chief, Mr. Srinivasan, to discuss why almost every Indian city has become almost unlivable and what real lasting solutions might actually look like. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Bengaluru is touted to be India's Silicon Valley. It's the tech capital of the country. Large proportions of tax come in from the city, but it's still reeling under some severe infrastructure crisis, as the Biocon chief and, Mohandas Pai pointed out. But who is really to blame for all this civic mess?
Yeah, it's a really big area which you want to cover. Let's see how much ground we can cover. It's one topic which everybody has an opinion. Everybody wants to say something about it, and because it's actually creating a problem for everyone. And it's not one particular, like you said, who's responsible. It's not one single thing which I can point out is responsible. There are multiple factors over the years which have gathered and then accumulated and now really staring us in our face, and really seems to be an impossible problem now, which we need to find a solution. So one of the probably reason is a failure to plan, failure to visualize or see how the urban spaces could be, what are the kind of cities we need, what is it India is going to grow. It starts from there. So there has been a failure at the political level, I would say. There's been a bigger failure at the bureaucratic level to sense and see. The bureaucrats created their own nice living spaces. They have their own enclaves in every city. Every city you will find there is a particular space where bureaucrats have built their spaces. And then politicians have their, the assemblies and the official buildings where entire transaction takes place. And the third is, of course, the finance. It also very much depends on how much, a city can generate finance. And there are social issues, migration, which keeps happening. Above all this, what seems to have really added is the changing weather pattern. Mm-hmm. You have to understand and admit that climate change is now a reality. Many politicians refuse to believe that. You have heard Trump saying that, there is no such thing. Also the technological changes which is happening, a city has to adopt those changes and quickly move on. Technology could be used very well in, garbage, waste disposal, electricity, water, drainage, all those things. So this is a combination of a whole lot of things which have come together and really staring in your face. What seems to have really exacerbated as of now is the climate change. That's why you hear this more often than what you would hear earlier. For instance, whenever you talk about Delhi, it's air pollution.
That's right.
Whenever you talk about, I'm not even referring to the flooding which happened in Gurgaon, which is considered to be a shiny new millennial city. If you refer to Bombay, it's the overall collapse of civic mess.
Flooding and all of that.
Again, flooding is one factor which seems to be common everywhere. Then when you talk of Bengaluru, it's all traffic.
Yeah.
You reach that city, everybody talks about congestion. They warn you, please be aware. If you want to go to airport, start early. If you want to reach that place, start early. So earlier we used to...
Everything.
Chennai again, yeah. You saw the kind of floods we saw.
That's
where even, it did not... See, the one thing about floods is, or the urban mess is, it doesn't kind of discriminate between rich and poor.
That's it.
You have seen people owning Mercedes and expensive BMWs and other expensive cars and still don't know where to go, and they're all floating all around. So you had a situation in Chennai, if you remember, that one of the biggest business stars of the city had to be rescued in a fisherman's boat, and he had a sprawling campus where he was living, but then it got flooded and he had to be rescued. Why this is happening? Because many of these answers are very obvious. Cities are built in spaces where earlier used to be either lakes, like in Chennai, or river, like in Yamuna riverbed, as it in Delhi, or various other lakes in Bengaluru. So that's another issue. So it's an unplanned growth of city, of the various factors which I mentioned. That's probably contributing to the overall mess we are facing today.
The government insists, they are fixing roads and, sort of all sorts of, and improving infrastructure day by day. But citizens see only short-term sort of patchwork, right? So it's all knee-jerk reactions. Why do Indian cities seem to stuck in this, cycle of reaction instead of long-term, real, solid, concrete urban planning?
Yeah, you have an excellent question. Some attempt was being made. I mean, even this, when Modi government came, it actually allocated
The smart
funds,
city
smart
vision,
city
yeah.
and all. They promised that they will take up some cities and develop them. What do you see? If you walk across, say the Pandivijar here in Chennai,
That's
it
right.
was supposed to be a part of the smart city. Now, what has happened? One thing good about that place is you can actually walk freely on both
Sidewalks,
sides.
yeah.
Sidewalks are broader and wider, but you will suddenly see a motorcycle coming there.
That's right, exactly.
You'll suddenly see.
But that's a problem of the people, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm saying that, again, if it is in a city, you just take a small little segment, which is hardly, say, a kilometer and a half. It doesn't serve the purpose. You have to extend this plan to a larger portion of the city, which comes into its own problems. So this seems more like an example of what could be done. But again, even in that place, if you have to refer to the same place, there was a parking lot. They built a multi-level car parking. It functioned well for some time and then suddenly stopped. And cars are once again being piled alongside the roads. So we are not able to plan properly. Even after having planned, we are not able to execute them properly. So that's what I said. It's a mix of policy, governance, and civic apathy. A whole lot of things are combining here.
But you also think that there's a funding problem to all of this, that we are not able to do something remarkable because we don't have enough funds. Because the government has allocated about 11.11 lakh crore for about the capital expenditure in the last budget. Obviously, there's a railway budget that's involved as well. But do you think the funding overall is not enough?
See, funding will be obviously it's an issue. If urban spaces had to be developed, then the freedom must have with those who actually govern those spaces. So the one of the most powerful figure in the city probably should be its mayor.
That's right. Yeah.
Who should be able to levy charges for various usage. Now we haven't actually able to perfect the user charges. For instance, there has been an argument that all the civic amenities which are being used must be paid for. Whether it is electricity, whether it is water, whether it is your sewerage, it must be paid for. Now the thing is, it's a very difficult political situation. You have heard right starting from Delhi how Kejriwal announced free electricity, free water, and then the disease spread all over India. Everywhere you have free subsidized power, subsidized water, and those kind of things. Where does the civic body gets its funding from? It's completely dependent on the state to fund it.
Yeah.
Because on its own, it has got limited resource. The only resource they have is a land use and municipal taxes which they impose. So obviously there were some attempts being made to allow them to float municipal bonds with which they can raise funds. They can use these debt instruments, float them. But then many of those things haven't taken off.
But do you think privatization would be a better idea for this? We've also tried public-private partnership, the PPP models in certain things. So you think that would be a best way to take it forward?
So the thing here is that in India, for a long time, the word privatization was considered a pretty bad word. So the intermediary term came as private-public participation.
Okay.
And attempts have been made. So for instance, in Delhi, they have tried to run bus services on PPP model. But then it wasn't such a great success because under the PPP model, they allowed a certain number of buses. They were called blue lines. These buses were, but then these buses were not properly regulated in the sense that the drivers were untrained, and the buses were not properly kept, and resulted in a whole lot of accidents. Probably one story is that the companies would go to the borders of Delhi and catch hold of few people there and bring them and make them as drivers.
Oh.
So you could see them driving recklessly because of competition to reach this place earlier, and it resulted in a whole lot of mess, and the government had to call it off. Yeah. So there was an idea, but the execution was so bad that it got a complete bad name to the even an attempt to privatize part of the whole idea. So that's how it ended.
Prime Minister Modi talks about Viksit Bharat, and but India's urban policy hasn't really kept with its economic, kept pace with its economic aspirations. India is the 5th largest economy, we say.
Yeah, that's true. See, if you have to just look at one figure, if you look at the key driver of economy, 60% of GDP is made up of urban spaces. And what is the land there? 3%. 3% of land is giving you 60% of GDP. So you see the pressure on the
3% of land, yeah.
City. So much pressure on the city because people migrate to city. So for instance, Delhi once it used to have 40 to 50 lakh population. Today it's crossing 2 crores. Chennai population is increasing. So the city has to be extended. They are extending the city. So there is a pressure, population pressure on the cities. And Bengaluru is a very special problem. They, besides, migration, there are a whole lot of talents which are coming all over India because it has become a catchment area for IT professionals. It is seen as a startup capital. It is seen as an innovation capital. It is seen as somewhere where...
the back office of the world.
Back office of the world, where you can actually see some kind of a Silicon Valley, Indian Silicon Valley taking shape. So aspirational. But then it couldn't keep up with those aspirations. The urban infrastructure or the roads or other facilities could not keep up with that. Same thing with Gurgaon. You have a lot of corporates with their headquarters in Gurgaon. Your Coca-Cola has that, your GE headquarters. There are many multinationals who have established their centers there. So ideally, and then you have many startup owners who are actually buying their condominiums, running into crores. There is recently real estate prices went up to 100 crores. But then when it rains, even those urban spaces, even those gated communities, which probably hold their noses high otherwise, have nowhere to go, nowhere to hide because it all gets flooded. And then the story is worse for those living in other areas, especially unauthorized colony, which is called in many of Indian cities. You will find suddenly there is a shiny road, and the next to that is a squalor with very poor infrastructure. So all these are creating a whole lot of pressure on the economy, on the issues which you raised. And the question which you basically asked.
That's it. So, but we've discussed a lot of issues here. But frankly, we have never seen this becoming election issue ever, right? We are not able to sort of hold our politicians accountable for the civic mess that's going on.
Yeah, I mean that's really a good question. Have you ever seen a politician winning or losing an election because he could not provide roads?
That's right, exactly.
Have you ever heard of there was no proper urban transport, so people got really annoyed and voted out that person? Because I think ultimately Indian elections, which really matter, is assembly and parliamentary elections, and the issues are never shaped around urban issues. Urban issues never become a political issue, electoral issue. It's largely, it becomes emotive issue or issues of overall economy, price, or caste, or religion, or other emotive issues. Hardly ever on urban infrastructure or urban issues. I think that's one big bane. And neither, like I said earlier, the people who are supposed to govern those cities have enough power or freedom or kind of heft to run those cities. So I think, yeah, it need to be the entire political system itself need to be reimagined. That can these cities be freed? Can the political power and the centers of political power and urban spaces, can these be separated? Can the governance structure move out? You have a very nice example if you look at Amravati, the way the new capital was planned for Andhra Pradesh. The chief minister decided, the first chief minister, Chandrababu Naidu, said Amravati is going to be a shiny new city along the bank of Godavari River. And he planned out, he got a Singapore, planner, and then the initiative was huge. But then nothing happened. He required a lot more funds, but he got minuscule funds to develop that. He did pour some money from the state, exchequer. He tried it, but what happened? So when he went out of power, and the next chief minister came, Jagan Mohan Reddy simply said that he's not going to accept, Amravati as a capital. So so the whole lot of circus happened around it. There is no continuity of decisions taken for an urban space. See, most of our flyovers, as they call, are bad design. Some flyovers, the turning angles are so bad that it results in crash. So one set of politicians build a certain flyover, the next set of politicians refuse to, recognize that flyover. So we have these constant problems which we face. And there's an example. There is one, I heard this on YouTube. Someone was saying that when he was in China, especially Beijing, to see, how the Olympic preparations are taking place, he saw excellent shiny roads and, and his car was racing towards those locations. They were brilliantly constructed locations, but the roads, the buildings alongside the road were scaffolded, kind of hidden from the eye view of those who were traveling on those shiny roads. One of the reasons when a question was posed to Chinese officials why this was done, he said, no, we plan to develop those spaces by 2030, some such, long-term timetable he gave. So obviously it's a communist government. They could take those kind of decisions, saying that one part of the city will be developed now, the other part can wait. So those kind of decisions they could take. And in a democracy, it's far more difficult because you have to balance a whole lot of things. Like I earlier indicated, you have to do a balancing political, social, there's a whole lot of disparities in the society. You also have to provide for underprivileged. You have to provide spaces for those also to live in city. You saw a situation in Chennai where they said we are building a new, flats for underprivileged. And if it is away from the main place of work, how will they commute? How much they can commute in a day? How much they can earn in a day? So those issues become a problem. So obviously it requires an integrated planning also. So urban planning is a pretty complex issue. I don't think we got it right.
Okay, so but the 74th constitutional amendment was supposed to empower city governments, right? Has that promise failed, and do we now need directly elected executive majors with real powers? Because what you talk about seems like a structural flaw, and to sort this out, there need to be policy level reforms.
Yeah, actually, it's a good idea. If the mayor of a city, he becomes an independent entity who has his own constitutional freedom to govern and run the city the way he wants, which is devoid of politics which governs the state and the nation, that will be perhaps a good idea to try it out. I don't think it's actually been tried in that sense because, as a three-layer democracy where there is a parliament and there is an assembly, the civic governance need to be empowered. I think it's certainly an idea whose time has come now.
Okay. So, one last question there, sir. Uh, just focusing on what has happened in Bengaluru, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, the founder of Biocon, and Mohandas Pai, for example, and they come out and, talk about a civic issue. You have the deputy chief minister sort of telling them, bringing in the Karnataka angle to it, that the brand is getting affected and so on. What does that reveal about the political culture around criticism and public accountability?
I think politicians, rather than trying to hide behind these kind of emotive issues, saying we are Kannadigas, this and that, should focus on and listen to what these people are saying. See, it's an unusual situation in India where business people or prominent people do not speak. If you take up many people do not speak out. In Bengaluru, like you said, Biocon chief, she has spoken.
Mohandas Pai has spoken to TheFederal as well.
Yeah, so they have spoken. They want these issues to be addressed. So I think the state government should pay attention. See, it all spreads into other issues. It becomes political because since it's a Congress government there, the chief minister perhaps feels targeted.
Yeah.
Rather than getting into this, he should try to address those issues because these are real issues. Because after all, these business people are trying to bring in a certain change. They are the one who are actually trying to do something, whatever their affiliations or whatever their thinking is. But on this issue, I think they are right and they must be heard.
Thank you very much, sir. Such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.